Well, it starts. Was in supervise the story process. So the first step is to, the story crew comes together. We work with the writer and the director to block out the story, decide everything's going to happen, and then we figure out the story in drawings, and then it goes to.
Well, kind of concurrently, the visual world of the movie gets designed at the same time. So while they're figuring out what actually is going to happen in the story, in the art department, we're figuring out what the world is going to look like and what it means to have, for example, Rapunzel in a tower. What does the tower look like? Where is the tower? All that kind of stuff happens kind of in a parallel track.
And helps each other. The story informs the visuals, and the visuals give us ideas about the story.
Exactly.
And then at the same time, we are developing different software that we need to, say, simulate 70 feet of Rapunzel's hair. And there's quite a bit of software engineering that has to take place in order to achieve that. And it's all informed by what the story artists are coming up with in terms of what the hair actually has to do. And from Dave's world, what the hair will look like. So it all feeds into itself.
I mean, the texture of everything is so real. It's almost like live action, but with a little point of animator, which is, I appreciate it. It's very. How do you guys accomplish that realism?
I think like one basic rule I think that we had was to have it feel realistic, but not photoreal. So there's a point at which the level of detail shuts off. Like the characters don't have like minute pores or hair or anything like that that's too super realistic. We just kind of stop it at a point. We want it to look appealing and we want it to feel caricatured, so we kind of limit it.
How much has technology helped storytellers like you to create a product like this?
Well, I mean, it really, obviously, it's affected what all three of us do, but yeah, it really does affect the type of story you can tell and sort of the level of detail you can get, and especially, I think, the animation in the film, the expressions on the characters is much more subtle, I think, than what 3D has done before. So it makes a more subtle, nuanced kind of story that you can tell.
You could hand animate 70 feet of hair, but I think you look at this 70 feet of hair and you just like your jaw drops. It's so amazing.
What was the toughest aspect that you had to face? I know this is Disney's 50th animated film, so there was a little. Did you feel the pressure?
Well, we didn't really talk about that much. I mean, we had enough pressure without thinking about that, really, I would say. I mean, I would say the toughest, I mean, we could each talk about the toughest part. I'd say the toughest part of doing the story is that you're starting the story with sort of someone who's been kidnapped. And I think we always try to find that balance of like, to be real to that story and show Rapunzel's predicament, but not be too dark or scary or depressing with it, because that is a very heavy subject already. So we tried to keep it light, but yet have the darker undertones.
How much is this a story of looking for one's identity?
Oh yeah, I mean, that's obviously inherent in the whole thing of sort of losing your identity and having to go out and work very hard to find it, absolutely. And for both of them, I mean, obviously he changes a lot during the movie and really discovers, I think, who he's supposed to be instead of who he is.
Recreating this literary world, I guess, were you thinking of any European city specifically or not?
Well, I'd say honestly, yes and no. You know, we did everything. I mean, the directors are very inspired by Disneyland, specifically Disneyland. And what has Disneyland been inspired by? It's been inspired by many specific European sites, I think. And we kind of followed the same path, but at the same time, they were very clear in terms of, well, we don't want anybody to look at something and go, oh, that's from such and such a place.
There's Brussels.
Exactly. So yeah, we looked at a lot of Eastern European architecture. The castles got kind of Danish architectural ideas in it, but we're really kind of all over the place, and we just kind of put it together and called it fairy tale.
So fairy tale, yeah. Why do you think fairy tales are so successful, or could be?
Oh, well, the fairy tales are great because they give you license to tell a real kind of story, but in sort of a fantasy world, which is great because then it's so nice to not be in our literal world, even though it's very much like our world, and things like having her chameleon and the horse and things like that And fairy tales, I think they're popular still because they're sort of timeless, right? I mean, they don't feel dated or old. They just feel like they're still current and yet exist in that time that has no time, you know?